Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Anarita Bashalieva, along with co-host Dr. Victor Fett, Dr. Katerina Shrey, and our program producer, Professor Larry Sherey. We host a weekly discussion panel on Russia's war on Ukraine with guests from Ukraine, military experts, medical personnel, academics, artists, literary figures, and relief workers. Our panel is recorded and circulated nationally and internationally. We appreciate your comments and feedback. Special thanks to Marshall University Libraries and MUIT for making this weekly event possible. If you are joining us live on Teams, please feel free to use the chat to post any questions for our guest. A quick greetings to our viewers in Ukraine from Dr. Katerina Shrey.
Вітаємо наших слухачів в Україні з глибоким поклоном. Ми далі свідки вашого страшного терпіння і також вашої великої сили. Дякую вам за вашу участь в нашій тижневій програмі.
Thank you, Katerina. Today's guest will be introduced by Dr. Victor Fett.
Thank you, Nara. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce in those, to say the least, troubled times, the speakers in our 158th weekly program. From Kyiv, Ukraine, joining us are John and Natasha Sennett, who have been here with us more than 2 years ago. And they are Americans living in Kyiv all this time during the war. They authored 2 books of a planned series of 4 titled Accidental Ukrainians. And I think we give microphone to them. We are honored to have them as our guests. Please, Natasha and John.
Introduce
Thank
yourself
you.
first.
Hi, everyone. My name is Natasha Sennett. This is John Sennett, my husband. We've been living in Ukraine since 2020. We came in November. Well, I came in November. You came in
I came in November.
later
Yes.
in November in 2020. And then we stayed in Ukraine through the Russian invasion and continuing living here currently. My background is that I'm a U.S. citizen, but I was born in Belarus. My father is Ukrainian. He's from Vinnytsia region, so I'm half Ukrainian, half Belarusian, but and then American citizen. So that's a lot to process. I teach first grade at Pechersk School International, which is in Kyiv, one of the districts in Kyiv, in Pechersk, and I love my job.
It's
Yes.
true. She does love her job.
I do. It keeps me sane.
It's the best teaching job she's ever had.
Well, yeah, I was a teacher in U.S. In Florida, yes, and now I'm happy to be here.
My name is John Sennett, actually born in Huntington in 1965 and grew up though in South Jersey. Short time in the Army Reserves in the U.S. Marine Corps. I work remotely for a company in Atlantic City, New Jersey, in transportation. I've been working remotely for 15 years. I've been with the company for 15 years. I think working remotely for 12. And basically, it worked even when the invasion started. I only answered emails. I didn't do all the dispatching and normal routine, but I continued to work. I've continued to work throughout the invasion. My background is in international economics and political science from George Mason University in Virginia. It's my undergraduate degree. I write for the Kyiv Post at times with a friend of mine named Andrei Buzarov, who's a geopolitical analyst here in Ukraine. I'm active in assisting the military. I have a lot of British partners that I work with. I have some French partners. I have a couple of U.S. partners. Primarily, I work with Europeans. We brought a lot of military aid in, and we've just gone through this whole experience with a lot of the same people. We're both Orthodox Christians, so we attend church here in Kyiv as well. I actually serve behind the altar in one of the churches here. And our faith has been one of the bedrocks of how we've gotten through this whole thing. And we're going to talk a little bit more, I think, about our book and how that helped us. So do you want to say anything before I start?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. So Accidental Ukrainians, which is, we signed a deal for 4 books with Hellion and Company, which is located in the UK. So the second book just came out on February 24th. That's book 2. So it covers every year from February to February. So this one covers February 2023 to February 2024. The first one is 2022 to 2023. And so what it became is that I started writing about our experience, or my experience, specifically about living through the war, and it was more, I guess, written during the time, sometimes right after missile attacks happened or right after some big event happened. And a lot of it was written in real time. And what I discovered as I went through it is that that's how I was processing the war. And so the more that I went into researching it, I discovered that it's what's called, there's a PTSD treatment called narrative expressive therapy, where people who have had PTSD, they go and they write down what happened to them, because a lot of people can't speak about it. So what I discovered is I guess that my writing was almost therapeutic for me. I wasn't like looking for anything to be therapeutic. I wasn't looking for therapy. But what I discovered is that that's how it helped me to process the war. And so I've turned it into something else and looked at it like it's called narrative processing. I'm processing my experiences within the war through writing. And frankly, I've been on the edge of PTSD a couple times, I think, based on the symptoms that they say that you get. And then every time I go back and I start writing, it kind of pulls me back out of that. So for me, it's a therapeutic process, but it's also, I don't know how many out there know about the history of Kyiv, but in Kyiv, from Kievan Rus, from the early days, there were what were called chroniclers, and there's a famous saint called Saint Nestor the Chronicler. So I look at us as we're kind of continuing a tradition here in Kyiv as chroniclers of the war from a personal standpoint. We don't really talk about politics. We don't get involved in politics. What we do is we tell people through our book some of our past a little bit and bring some of the past in, but we tell people about what we're experiencing on a personal level and what we're seeing on a personal level and how it feels to live through it. And just to give people that an American perspective, I guess. I don't know how else to say it. It's or an English speaking perspective, but really we kind of both have a bit of Jersey in us. So there's a little bit of, and she's definitely got Jersey in her because she was a cocktail server in Atlantic City. So she got used to dealing with people there from Jersey. So we've kind of got, I guess, a little bit of that forward New Jersey sort of communication style. And we can be very frank about things. There's within the books, there are stories of resilience, there's stories of sadness, there's stories of despair, there's stories of depression. And it's just a very personal experience for both of us. I wrapped up book 3. Natasha still has part of hers to work on, but I wrapped mine up about February 24th of 2025 for that. So book 3 is finished. I haven't started on book 4 yet. I just went down to Odessa to visit a friend, and I took a bunch of notes, but I haven't written anything yet. So we hope that you read the book. I think Victor posted the website And there's a few different options for like, and it's available on Google Books, Amazon, Apple, 27 different platforms. It's an ebook right now. We're in talks with the publisher to get it turned into a print book and sold in the US. So basically that's it. And I'll let Natasha talk a little bit, and then I'll give you some current experiences as well for book 4.
Maybe you should open for questions before I.
No, do your thing, and then I'll do.
Well, I don't have a speech prepared. I was wondering if anybody had any questions, but my approach to Finish to it is a little different than John's. John started out processing psychological part of it, I guess, through writing, and it didn't start as a book. It started as his childhood experiences. Feely. It started out as his childhood experiences in Cape May Point. And that was like the first days of war, when it was the heaviest for all of us. For me, I couldn't. Writing was not something that I was planning on doing. And honestly, this whole experience with the book, it was just totally accidental. Just like, well, I guess we're accidental Ukrainians. Because honestly, for me, I wasn't trying to like write a book and have, I don't know, an audience or anything. But at some point, John was just saying, look, as we were into it, I guess almost a year has passed.
First year, yes.
The first year, before he was suggesting that, well, maybe I should try it also, just like not necessarily for publishing purposes, just for yourself, and see how, if the process would help. And I was thinking to myself, well, because when the war started, we just kind of like felt like dead men walking, I guess.
Yes, still felt that way.
We had our last suppers many times. We had a lot of things.
Yes.
The first few months. And we didn't die. And then some more time passed and we didn't die. And then I started thinking, well, if we make it alive through this, maybe it would be good for me at some point to look back and remember. Not necessarily I was thinking that I was going to forget what happened, but just kind of remember those day-to-day experiences and things that were happening, for me to look back as a chronicle of some sort. Maybe for me, maybe for my family, because obviously I have not seen Belarusian side, which my dad right now, who is Ukrainian, he lives there. My mom also is in Belarus, so I haven't seen them, and I don't know when and if it will happen. Well, I know anytime soon it won't. And I was thinking maybe if I had something in writing and just kind of like pass it on to somebody who cared, to the closest people. And that's how it started. And then at some point, I guess I wanted to answer the question for myself was, why is it that we stayed? Because, the exit ticket was there for both of us. We could come out, like we had an option to leave, not once. Feely, not once.
Excuse our dog.
Maybe
He's a little excited.
a few times, in West Virginia, that program, remember?
Yes.
But anyways, and then somehow we stayed through all of this. And I wanted to know why. And I guess the best way to know that would be to start at the beginning. And that's how the whole process started. And now I'm into it. And I'm writing book 3. Currently, I'm working on book 3. Those are 2 different styles. Honestly, I'm not sure if... I know there is a niche for it. I know some people are interested, genuinely interested. I know that there are not a lot of expats that stayed. I know that some of them came, some of them left, came again. It wasn't a consistent boots on the ground, so to speak. It was more of so there are not many perspectives. There are few, but not many, who stayed in Kyiv or in Ukraine through the entire Russian invasion currently. And those experiences. Philly, come on.
Our dog does not like being not the center.
I think out of all three of us, he is the one who suffers the most, honestly.
I actually want
He
to jump
has,
in on this. I think when you visited
Yes,
us
he's
last
been
time,
through it. Yes, he is the one who is mostly affected. And I think every time a motorcycle or a loud car starts out outside, he runs between the two carrying walls in the hallway. So that's a dog who has PTSD for sure.
He definitely has PTSD.
Yeah,
Yes.
which he doesn't show it, and we didn't know until recently when it started showing itself on the nervous,
physical
yeah, on the physical level. Yes,
Right.
because
I-
yeah, but yeah.
I
Phoebe.
remember
Go
from
ahead.
your first visit, you shared photos of all of you like together hiding in, I guess, the
Yeah.
basement. So it's actually quite wonderful to see your four-legged family member. I believe you've lost a dog as well, right? And
Yes.
since
Yeah. Samantha, it's going to be 3 years.
It was 3
In
years. Oh, it will be,
no,
yes.
March
March 25th.
It's going to be 3 years.
But
to
she died of
that.
cancer. And I'm going to kind of return to the whole Cape May Point thing. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that area. It's in South Jersey. So none of those stories are included in the books, but I was kind of processing my, like they say that your life flashes before your eyes when you're going to die. Well, it's sort of like that, but at least I had time to process it and write about it. So that's sort of how I started was writing about my childhood at the Jersey Shore, and then I didn't add them into the books because it wasn't really relevant to the books, and it just kind of, and I didn't plan also on writing a book either, and I just started writing, I guess, in essay form, and then the essays sort of took shape, and then the publisher, his name is Duncan. He reached out to me on LinkedIn through another connection and said, I saw what you're doing, or and then we started talking. He's like, well, I'd like to publish the books. And I said, books? He said, yes. He said for each year a war, and he said, well, let's sign up for 4. And I was like, oh, great. So that means the war is going to last for at least 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely not a couple of weeks.
No, not.
As they were saying, well, at least a couple of weeks. Remember the first few months of war,
Right.
because we were like desperately looking for answers anywhere.
Yes.
On social media, on the news, anywhere, and like to see like how long.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the scenarios was minimum couple of weeks.
Yes. So we stopped
It was
listening to any
like,
speculation.
yeah,
We stopped listening to any predictions. We stopped listening to a lot of politicians and what they have to say. And we just we live our lives. We help the people that we help. We just try to survive each day. And that's how we live, how we go on. And I'm going to share a little bit about book 4 right now, because it's kind of interesting. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with Odessa. I assume most of you. It's a seashore resort. It's kind of like the Jersey Shore. So I kind of felt like I went home when I went there. So a friend of mine, his name is Tristan Rourke. He's actually a U.S. citizen married to a Ukrainian. They had a baby in the war. And so I went down there to visit him and spend time with him and his family. So, normally when you go to the seashore, you collect shells. Well, this is a shell from Odessa right here. It's a mussel shell, which, by the way, they have great mussels down there.
I don't know how is it going?
No, you'll see where I'm going. Okay. So I walked along the seashore and I picked up a seashell. So I wasn't named Susie though. So the next day, Tristan and I are coming back from this place called Zelda's. It's an absinthe bar with oysters. They sell absinthe and oysters. We didn't do too much. We didn't get out of hand or anything. And as we're coming home, and I'm walking up the hill to go to the Airbnb that I was staying in, Shaheed started coming in. And as I was walking up the hill, because I didn't have a choice, there was no shelter nearby. I had to keep going up the hill to get to it. And as I went, you could see the tracer rounds in the sky, and you could see the Shaheeds getting shot down over top of the sea. And so the next day, Tristan and I went out and we had breakfast, and we went and actually went with his wife Tanya too. And we walked down to this one area of the beach where the air defense, the Odessa air defense guys hang out. Well, not where they hang out, but where they do their jobs. And they did a really great job the night before. They shot down all the shaheeds that I could see, and it was free Russian fireworks that we joked about. And then as we walked down to that spot, there was this. This is a 20 millimeter round, and it's what they use to shoot shaheeds down. And they leave them, the air defense guys, they leave them out there by where they shoot them down. So like if you want to pick one up and take it home. And there was, I don't know how many, there's a couple dozen there. So
I guess ironic, right?
yes, when you go, you pick up a shell in Odessa, this is the shell that you get.
The shell and the shell
that you
get.
get. So I'll have to write a story about that when I took a bunch of notes. Anyway, that's all for me as far as a presentation. I didn't really provide any visuals, and I'm sure that you can see the links for the book. We hope that you buy it. We hope you leave a review. Some money that when we have extra money, we try to give it to the military as much as possible. I don't do too much humanitarian stuff because a lot of people are already doing it. Primarily, I support a couple military units. So that's it on my side. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay, so we'll open up for questions or everything else now.
It's okay.
Victor, it's your show.
Well, it's our show together, so it is a rare, again, honor and opportunity to ask people from Kyiv in March 2025. And I really don't know what to start with. Help me, please, our audience and co-hosts, other than just saying thank you to John and Natasha for being with us. Dr. Deutsch, please. Dr. Len Deutsch, our former graduate dean of Marshall University. Please, Len.
Hi. I have a question, and I'm asking you to respond in a journalistic way. It doesn't have to be a personal answer, but President Zelensky was here about a week ago and was treated rather shabbily at the White House. I'm wondering, what is your sense of his popularity now? Was it hurt or has it increased? And to what degree are people willing to accept the fact that regular elections are being delayed because of the war and they don't see him as a dictator, or do they see him as a dictator? In other words, what is the perspective on recent developments in Ukraine?
Okay, it's really easy to answer. People in Ukraine who did not like President Zelensky and probably would have opposed him
before the war.
Or even just a few months ago, were speaking against him, all got behind him. Everybody rallied behind President Zelensky. Even some of my friends who I know who don't like him very much rallied behind him, and his support has increased exponentially since February 28th. I call it the February fiasco. So no, we don't. Nobody that I know looks at him like a dictator, and obviously we know a lot of Ukrainians, and they speak to us a lot since we're American. They always want to get the American perspective, and we're like, we don't know. They're crazy over there.
Right. Also, I think it just shows a little bit the nature of Ukrainians. Ukrainians are they're freedom-loving people. In other words, nobody ever would be able to. It's their job to either support or take down a president, and they've been really good at it in the past. So, in other words, there is no such president in Ukraine that will continue his term against people's will. This is not that kind of people.
Yes.
And right. And basically what's been cruising on social media and in the news is that Ukrainians truly stood behind him and basically said that it's our president to either judge or trash or criticize, but nobody else's.
Yes. Very territorial.
Yes, we will take care of our own president, and nobody else has the right to do so. We were the ones who chose him, and we were the ones who will see if he fits to continue his job or not. And currently, as a country, Ukraine is behind Zelensky.
I hope that answers your question.
You've answered in the way I hoped you would answer it. Thank you.
And very nice. It just kind of spoke out to me. Something that I've heard. I can't remember who was the journalist, but commented on the meeting in the White House. Basically, it was kind of a little sarcastic, but also on point, saying that two people met: a man in a suit, and a man with a suit and the suit without a man. And I just kind of thought that it summed it up.
Yes, I saw that too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, John, Natasha. And this might open up a series of many questions, but while our guests are thinking, the one which comes to my mind is that what I gather even from your latest response, and generally that the mood in Ukraine is not despair right now. That with all the movements in Europe that we see, at least from here, you should be hopeful in many ways that open up, if I may say now, which were not visible before. Can you comment on this?
I can comment on the fact that all the military guys I know are fine. They have no problems. They're ready to keep fighting. I can comment on the fact that they shot Shaheeds down over our heads on Odessa, and the next day was a nice day, and the beach was like the boardwalk, it's Arcadia City, was packed with people out having fun and enjoying life and living life. I came back to Kyiv. It was the same situation. So no, there's not a big sense of despair here, because despair defeats us. That's like admitting defeat. So, people go on, some people get emotional, obviously. Some people pay too much attention to the news, and our strategy has been not to pay too much attention to the news. And to what people say. We focus more here on actions, and I think a lot of Ukrainians are the same. And obviously the EU has taken some actions as far as increased weaponry coming our way. And then there's talk of the Sky Shield. So we saw the EU rally behind President Zelensky and the whole country. And, we know what the Europeans are capable of, probably a little bit more than the average American does. And so we're not, I don't want to say we're not worried. We're worried somewhat, but not enough to stop our lives and stop living. And it's the same with all the Ukrainians that we know as well. You want to say anything?
No, other than the fact that Europe has been sleeping nicely, taking a nap, hoping that America somehow is going to solve the world's problems. Maybe I think that finally Europe is maybe waking up a little bit and understanding that nobody's going to take that step. And rightly so. I mean, I can understand that America is a separate continent altogether. And many problems that we're facing, life or death problems, I understand, but people move on with their lives either way. So we've been in it long enough to understand that people cannot just necessarily drop what they're doing, stop paying the bills, and start paying more attention to Ukraine. I think we're past that point as a country. I think that people realize, the war that started, I think it just kind of opened up who is who and what is what. And Ukraine does realize that it needs help, and nobody's denying that. But Ukrainians are also, they're kind of people who are fighting for this war and for this freedom. I'm not talking about people who just left or trying to cross the border illegally or any of those people, because I'm talking about people who are in the country fighting tooth and nail for it. Those are people who accepted death at some point already. since the invasion. They already know that there are people, they know that the end might not be, not all is well that ends well kind of thing. They know what's waiting on them, maybe nothing good, but they're putting all they've got. And I was surprised after this fiasco visit. I wouldn't call it fiasco visit. The visit was actually nice, but the whole meeting, that a lot of Ukrainian military responded with basically, no, this is not the deal that we should take. We've been fighting for it for 3 years to what? To give half of the country to Trump for the deal, and then the other half to Russia, basically, for what? That all these people and children and everybody else who is dead. So basically, at this point, Ukrainians are going to the end. The ones who are in it, fighting for it.
And a lot of Ukrainian volunteers. Like I work with some volunteer groups who help the military. Ukrainian volunteer groups who help the military, and they're going forward with everything that they had planned. They're not changing anything. Luckily, most of them were not dependent on USAID money. So those organizations have pretty much, for the most part, dried up. But those who were getting money from the diaspora and from different groups and from Europeans and from Brits, they're still going strong, and they still continue to go strong. Like I have one that's going to have a veterans program on March 15th. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. This is a very, very good answer. I see our viewer opening camera. A question, maybe? No? Mr. Kirk? No? Okay. Other panel, please, Katerina, your comments.
So before my comments and my question, I'm going to post in the chat a picture of the shaheeds, just so that our viewers get a sense of what we're talking about. And you so calmly described this walking across the beach, and as these things are coming in and being blown up, and it's a reminder to all of us how the new normal has changed in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Oh,
This is new normal, basically, yes.
when you were with us about 16 months ago, you made a comment then about how you would go out always together, so that God forbid if something happened to you, it would be both of you. And I mean, I think that struck a lot of our viewers, and I'm so happy to see you both back. I'm so happy to see you both back. Natasha, my question is for you. So thank you for being a teacher. That is such a noble profession, and I cannot imagine how difficult it is today. I'm wondering, what age do you teach, and how are your students doing? How are children? What's happening with kids right now? What age are you teaching, and like how are they doing?
I teach grade 1.
Oh, wow.
And this is my second year with Pechersk School International. And we have basically a system set up. We have air raids announcements, and we run to the shelter under 3 minutes. We're in the bomb shelter. We have classrooms, like full-blown classrooms. In other words, when I come to school, there is classroom, the regular classroom, and there is my bomb shelter classroom.
Wow.
With a projector, everything. So for me, my transition time between part of the lesson that was interrupted to the next part of the lesson is 5 minutes tops. And my kids are with it. We know 1, 2, 3, let's go, 10, 9, and we're back on the smart board, whatever is there. We're back in it, unless it's a very distressing situation. For example, like there are ballistic missiles. It's a little different than Shaheed is over us or something. If it's ballistic missiles and there are explosions nearby, and I see the children are stressed out more than usual, then we'll do some mindfulness activity to get over it as much as that is possible. But you will be surprised to see that they're very resilient little creatures. They're not like my first year, I was a little bit concerned. Like I wasn't sure how everything was going to play out, because like, what if the children will start crying because they're still very young?
Sure. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, 6-year-old, think about it, but not really. they're just more than anything, they're just kind of like they're rolling eyes, like, again, the air raid. I'm like, quickly, go, 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 get your waters, go, go. So in other words, they're lining up and quickly walking feet, really good. Boom, we're in the shelter, we're continuing walking and learning. And it's just surprisingly really smooth. And then we have the calendar of the Kyiv brigade, that the Ukrainian soldiers.
12th Special Forces, these guys.
Yeah, yes, we have the Ukrainian calendar, and when we always like look at them and say, see, the guys are good, so they know what they're doing. Our job is to learn, their job is they know what they're doing, and they're just kind of like somehow it calms them down.
And you should tell them about the 9 o'clock every day with the kid.
And yes, at 9 o'clock, we have a moment of silence with my class, where we basically we're paying respects to Ukrainian soldiers and for those who died and, you know, gave their lives. And every time the little alarm goes off, my kids know they just get up and they're quietly stand and pay respects. And we sit down and continue learning. They know they're in the war zone. Also, those are children of families who, put it this way, they're very affluent families, but yet they're here in Kyiv. And some of them with siblings, the entire families are here. So those are kids that have seen quite a bit of stuff. And they have an option to
East, aren't they?
Right. And a lot of them are displaced, internally displaced IDPs. From Kharkiv, for example, I have a few students. Like they're talking about it. Like, for example, right now we're on spring break. And some of my students were talking about visiting families, their grandma and grandpa. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's great. Where are you going? Kharkiv.
Wow.
And I'm like, sweetheart, are you sure? Yes.
It's really
Dnipro,
hard.
some people have families in Dnipro and somewhere close to Zaporizhia. And last year I had children from Zaporizhia. So in other words, a lot of internally displaced children who've seen a lot. They might not show it the same way that we as adults understand stress. They might seem okay, and it might show itself differently, like some time would pass, and by the end of the day, the child will have a meltdown over something silly, like unrelated completely, like it's just hours passed and everything, and all of a sudden it would be a meltdown over something silly. And then when you start talking to them, you understand that no, it doesn't just pass them by. They're like sponges, they absorb things that happen around them. They might not necessarily show it immediately, but it does show in different ways. And so for me as a teacher, my job is, before I teach them curriculum, is to make sure that children are in the best possible shape to be open to it, to learning. So we do lots of mindfulness, lots of last year I went to Poland and I've taken a trauma workshop from what was it?
Rotary International.
Yeah. They actually wanted to come to Kyiv, but Rotary would not let them. So we ended up meeting in Poland, and I picked up some new strategies that I'm using, and you know, they're effective, but they're kind of like targeting mostly children who kind of went through trauma, and then now they're living in the in the safer or better circumstances. This is ongoing trauma, so we're kind of learning with it as we go, because like sometimes children, for example, that are they seemingly fine, they don't show any like signs of anything, and then we would do some mindfulness activity, for example, and then I will ask them to draw something, for example, and then I will talk to them about it. And one of the children that was absolutely awesome, very strong boy, very like no stress, whatever, like you would look at him, like you would not think that he's affected by stress of any kind. It's just not at all the personality of that child. And when we were doing one of the activities, I realized, I was asking him about his drawing, and he said, this is sadness for his horse that died in his previous house when the war started, and the bombs were falling down, and it killed one of the horses. and he was there and he witnessed it, and
Oh
it's
my
just
God.
kind of, yeah, and you just realize like, well, that happened a year ago, literally, and then he's just coming up now, and it was just so you deal with it. So in other words, it still comes, that trauma that still expresses itself. So you give them a chance to express it in creative manner, and I think that helps.
Yeah,
Which
I was
falls
going to
in line
ask
with
you.
what we're doing. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was actually going to ask you, like, was there training involved? Did you just instinctively know this? So thank you for speaking about the training from Rotary. That's I mean, I can't imagine as a teacher, you always worry about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Your students need to have food, water, then shelter, but they
Mhm.
also need a sense of safety. I mean, you all don't, all
Mhm.
that's gone. And so it's hard to think about like the pedagogical goals when your basic
Right.
needs of safety. I
Yeah.
can't. So I cannot. So I'm deeply grateful that you and your colleagues are incorporating things like mindfulness. That you're addressed. I mean, I wouldn't know what to do with this. So thank you for, especially for the children, the teachers of the younger children. I imagine there's a lot of healing that you're doing that you're not even aware of protecting them from horrors or helping them process horrors.
Like we would do, it's not like constantly, I have to see like there's a need for it. You know, you still have to put in curriculum, they're still learning to
Yeah.
speak English, and that's but we do this activity, like for example, like a body scan. Like they would have a little picture, and I would say, all right, so you come in and scan your body real quick, check in with yourself and see like where's your energy right now, what are you feeling, what do you need to do, like what are some strategies you can do, something that teaches them like basic stuff for this age group that they can, you know, like breathe in, like a blowfish breathe in, for example, or like we will do little giggling activities, like they will lay down and we'll put pillows on their bellies and we'll do a deep breath and see how the pillow or teddy bear comes up and down. It's just kind of like do little giggles with it. But at the same time, there's just something they can do because they come in the morning and they share stories like, there is not any horror in their eyes anymore. They would be just like sharing it, like, oh yeah, I'm like, how you feeling? Because like it was a loud night. And they would be like, oh, fine, you know, sleep. And then my mom ran in and we like, I had to get up and go to the shelter, but you know, to their house, shelter in the house. But I'm fine. I'm okay. Oh, I saw the Shahid was blown up. It was blown up above our house, but it just was kind of far, so it's okay. So in other words, they're accepting it as their new reality and human nature. Like for example, 16 months ago, I would never be able to be okay with the fact that John would be going somewhere visiting a friend in Odessa who is not as well protected as Kyiv to see a friend for almost a week. Because no, now like I was staying home because Philly, he is showing stress in a different manner. He's physically his stress is he's showing the physical. So I had to stay at home because we can't like take a sick dog with us and carry it around. He's not really feeling well. So I was staying home with Philly, and John went to visit Tristan, and I was okay with it. I know that Odessa gets hit a lot, and I just kind of at this point we've dealt with it together and separately, so I know he can handle whatever comes at him.
By the way, Tristan is he's the author of the epilogues of both of our books. He's agreed to do the epilogues for all 4 books. So he's a writer also.
Nice. What is his last name? Is it? Oh no, maybe can you share it? Or no?
No, Tristan Ruark. He served in the U.S. Marine Corps and in the U.S. Army. He retired. He served in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's married to Tanya. They have her son, which is Yevgenia. He's like 15 or 16, and then they have their daughter Adelina, which they had together. They went to Romania for about a year, and then his wife Tanya missed Odessa so much that they decided to come back, and she decided to have the baby in Ukraine.
And when they had a baby, Odessa was going. I'm not sure.
Blackouts.
Yeah, that was a really bad time. So they had a baby literally like a couple of weeks old, and then when in the bomb shelter with the baby, we were supposed to go for christening,
Yeah.
and then it was not safe. We stayed. We didn't make it. It just was not because they were in the bomb shelter the whole time, and for a while. And so now, basically, that was the chance for John to go, and then he went. I said, "Please go, say hello."
And I took an overnight bus home from Odessa to Kyiv, and it was
Right.
packed.
And so John was also feeling safe enough to leave me by myself at this
Yes.
point. So in other words, like we know each other's threshold to move on with lives, and it's just at this point it's we don't like some, for example, like some expats that work at school, they're not at the point yet where they basically run to the bomb shelter most of the time when the air raid sounds, like they immediately go to the cell phones, and we do that too, but I don't remember honestly the last time I went to the bomb shelter. It's just no longer the case for us. We go in between the two carrying walls. That's the best that we can, and obviously if I'm outside and something is happening, I'll go to the metro, but we go through, unless there is a big boom outside of my window, I basically move on and just and so once my phone is on mute a lot of times, and there are times when I don't know there's an air raid. It's because it's constantly beeping. I need to be alert and aware of it at school. So when it's my day off or something, there are times that I'm not even aware. For example, there was a ballistic threat unless somebody, like a friend of mine, would let me know, like, are you in the bomb shelter? And then I'd be like, oh, really? Yes, there is an air. So in that, this is 3 years of war, and you just kind of
Yes.
get
There's an
immune
There's an acceptance
to some things.
of death, I guess, almost. I don't know how else to be like if it's your time, it's your time.
I guess once you have accepted that this is your situation, and you have not so much, I don't want to say became comfortable with death, but yes, you kind of have to be comfortable because you realize that this is basically your situation. This is where you live right now, and it can happen any day. Once you kind of pass that fear point, there is not much. That's why when you ask if Ukrainians are despaired, no, because a lot of them have already accepted that this is their situation. They're going into it realizing that they're probably going to die. Just like many people out there are dying for different reasons and causes all over the world. And this is their reason and cause. So this is what's driving them. And this has been not just since 2020. For a lot of them, it's been since 2014.
Yes.
For a lot of them, even sooner. So, and for us being here as expats, at some point, yes, it became our.
I don't call myself an expat anymore. I call myself an immigrant.
Well, I mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to read your book. I see that Bear Kirk has his hand up, so I'm going to pass the microphone over to Mr. Kirk.
Hi, thank you, Katrina. John, Natasha, I'm working, as you can see, I'm back in the States, not for good reasons. We're being deported under Trump's new rules for Ukrainians. We've got until 1st of April to get out. I must share the letter with you later. It's quite amazing. You will be forcibly displaced in an official government document. I mean, I'm going, what? Anyway, that's in the future. We do have one. I'm working on a book with a fellow American serviceman who's now living in Canada. We've experienced a lot in some of the villages that we've cleared down in Kherson and Mykolaiv Oblast. And a lot of the kids there have been given small pamphlets in Ukrainian telling them what to do with unexploded ordnance and munitions, these little plastic butterfly things that the crazy people from up north are dropping on us. And I've on my experience, just over 3 years, not in 40 years as a soldier, but the last 3, has really pushed me into 3 different avenues for the book. And I've decided on that the book doesn't need to be a pamphlet. It needs to be a proper book and into the mainstream curriculum for the next few years, for sure. And I want it to be in the old style of Ukrainian stories with folklore and graphics. And so they're learning about the old ways of passing down stories and tales, but they're getting to learn in that manner about 21st century problems. Second one is I'm looking really hard at the psychosocial message in the book. how can I get that message across? I mean, I can speak to you guys offline about that. And then the third one, obviously, is the getting it through the educational system. But I think the psychosocial and then bringing in the old traditional ways of telling stories is, for me, a key point. I'm just going to quickly share my screen with you, if I may. John, this is the day when in Odessa the Shahid drones came in. I was on the seafront with 36 Marines manning the battlements there, and an awful lot of noise. And when I came back to retrieve some expats who had joined up at a hotel or were there to assist us, they didn't know where to go. So I went back into the city to get them. And this is what I found. I don't know if you can see that.
Yes.
So that's Olga. She's from Novomykolaievka.
Wow.
She's 84. And we shipped her out to Odessa. She was one of 3 living organisms left in the village.
Wow.
The dog, I'll stop sharing. And I parked her off at a hotel. She had a chaperone, and she was being moved on to Constanza, to J.K. Rowling's villa, 2 villas that she's now made into on one an orphanage, on the other one a halfway house a transit house for moving people on. Olga stayed. She was 84, and unfortunately on 20th of December, just gone, she passed in her sleep peacefully. She didn't want to go anywhere else in Europe. She couldn't go back to her village because there's nothing left of it. But she sat and told me stories in the old way that a babushka would tell you. And she did it in such a colourful manner that you were actually transported there. And that's why I decided to go with the old traditional route. That dog over my shoulder, Trouble, is from the same village. I don't know if you can see that. That is me on the 18th of March, 2022. And on the 20th, I was renamed Colonel Mishka Komornitska. And they made a mistake. Natasha's raising her eyebrows. It even says on my rank slide, Komornitska, not Komornitsky. So I was the only male colonel in the whole of the Ukrainian army. Damn it.
My bad.
So, yeah, I mean, we've got so many lessons to learn. But I think if we're really smart about it, the resilience of the kids is going to come through, and our next generations are going to be just fine.
Yes. I think the idea for a textbook style is excellent. Personally, are you working with that with Shane O'Neill? Is that who you're working with that on?
Shane put me in touch with a guy called Raymond Raymond Orlick. So we're actually making a movie together as well. The reason I've got so much time on my hands is because I left Mykolaiv 2.5 days ago to come here and pack up my belongings. And I've also been pulled into Major General Marchenko's office, and he's told me that they've reinforced the upper limits for serving for servicemen, and I'm 4 years over it. Although I still perform like a 35-year-old, he said, right, technically you should not be holding the rank of colonel now in the Ukrainian army. And I said, well, can I stay? Yes. Can I wear the uniform? Yes. And can I still work from HQ rather than out at the front end? He said, yes. I went, well, not much changes then. I'll go with that. Okay. Just bear with me. That's there. So I've got a lot of time on my hands now, and I want to get creative. I want to put a lot back. I've learned a lot from running sports charities in South Africa, pre and post apartheid, and I just think the time's right. So yeah, I'll talk to you guys offline about the psychosocial side of things, and how we can meld that into the narrative and some of the illustrations in the book. I think it's just an important message. It can't just be a 2D book. I think it needs to be something that's ingrained. Right. I mean, and for me, one of the worst things about this war is, you will ask any Ukrainian child down in Mykolaiv, what did you learn at school today? And the one thing that they still remember from yesterday is the difference of the noise between a Shahed drone and a Caliber missile. I mean,
Yes.
but having said that, having the night before I left, having F-16s and Mirage jets fly over our heads for the first time in a long time was just a nice noise. You've been there, John. It's great.
Yes.
So yeah, that's it from me. Thank you.
You should be a future guest.
Yeah.
Please,
Victor.
Mr. Kirk, we take this that you are invited, and please, John will connect us, I'm sure, on wherever you are.
Thank you.
It was so nice to hear you, and so nice to have everyone here. We still may stay. We have been an hour, but we still may stay for a few questions and answers. Please, those who haven't talked, please have your camera opened. I'm just these days in a loss for words, because obviously for you guys are living in it, and we only feel like Captain Jean-Luc Picard, who has his prime, whatever it is, initiative not to meddle. But world has changed so much that we feel that we also can make some difference, even by those small connections. At least I'm told by Ukrainian friends all the time that we shouldn't stop, even though our viewership on this program is definitely not by many thousands, but still I don't have this feedback or comments from many, but people watch it, and many were so glad that there is no despair, that people still bring all kinds of events and children and people and normal life, and more so as they face this enemy, which many politicians now prefer not to even name. So that's such a bizarre world, which more and more remembers what Jonathan Swift wrote about hundreds of years ago. Katerina.
I appreciate very much the concern for the children, and actually have learned a lot from this conversation today. I think just like any other person out there, any mother, I mean, I can't imagine being a mom with my children in danger. But what I wanted to say was, as I heard you talking, you both mentioned resilience, that the kids are better than I think our imaginations are letting us be, at least externally. And it occurred to me that, so I'm the daughter of immigrants from World War II, and they don't mind. There are definitely things in my childhood. Whenever there was a plane, we lived near an airport. My mom would get very nervous, and my grandmother would be like, "Come in the house, come in the house, come in the house," which was, for us kids, this was ridiculous. It was just a plane. So there were like little indications of something. But overall, and then there were conversations later on. I do remember, and I know there's such a thing as secondary and tertiary trauma. So I'm not going to repeat any of the stories, but there are things my parents have shared that they witnessed, which is probably akin to what some of these kids have seen. Certainly, like the poor kid who lost his horse. And so, but I say all that, and then I realized, I did not know any of this growing up. I mean, I gradually learned it, but my parents were normal. My parents somehow, despite what they experienced, they were okay. And then I also remember them both crediting their being okay to having a loving parent. They each had a mom who looked after them. And as long as there was somebody there to say, it's going to be okay, God will take care of us, we're going to be okay. Or it just this apparently, that's when a child, that was enough for my parents to grow up, surely with trauma. I'm very sure my parents both have some undiagnosed PTSD, but yeah, they made it through, and they made it through, I think, largely because of loving presences and caring people such as yourselves. And so I'm just very, very grateful in your various capacities, what you are doing to enable the next generation to grow up with a semblance of normalcy. Thank you guys very much.
Sure. Any other questions?
Please. No one Has any
Okay, well,
question? Oh,
I
Anara,
have a
please.
question.
Please,
Yeah,
Anara.
I just very
Open your
thank
camera, yes.
yeah, I am very thankful for your great job documenting what is happening, because it's another view that usually what we see on TV, mostly politicians and military experts, but we don't see people, real actually suffering and just their feelings. And I know that in Kyiv, that I actually read that 130 ethnic groups live in Kyiv. It's extremely diverse population. And
Yes.
how the war and resistance unified this people, and especially it's visible probably at school level or among parents, or because it's understandable that usually people have a different perception on political situation, but how this actually changed what you see in
Well,
Kyiv and in other places. Thank you.
I can talk about it not so much on an ethnic level, but on a religious level. Protestants, Orthodox, Catholics, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, pagans, witches, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Everybody's cooperating and not worrying about the spiritual side, like, oh, you're a Catholic or you're this or you're that. They're all cooperating together. And it's the same, I think, on the ethnic level. And Odessa also is very, very diverse culturally. Nobody says anything. You can't even tell. I mean, other than, maybe somebody's skin color is different, or maybe the way they dress is different. But like, nobody singles anybody out. That's for sure. Everybody kind of just sticks together. Like, if we don't stick together, well, then we fall apart. At this point, we don't have a choice but to stick together. And even people that maybe you don't necessarily agree with, you cooperate with, because you have to. I mean, that's how we get through it
Mhm.
together. Raison, basically. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? You want to say anything?
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. So what we gather from everything we hear and from what you're saying, that there is no way that Ukrainians will agree to surrender their territory, their land to the aggressor, to abandon those who are occupied right now, and
Well, go ahead.
They will keep fighting no matter what, in any form and shape.
Listen, the dog has to go out, so Natasha's
Yes,
going to
please.
take him.
I'm gonna have to say goodbye, you guys.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for having me. Philly needs to go outside for a little trip. So I hope to see you next time. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you very
having me.
much. Come back anytime.
Bye.
Thank you. I know
Well-
it's a long question and long answer, but
Yes.
let me ask it this way. In the beginning of the war, I was talking to a lady in Odessa, Russian-speaking lady in Odessa, who told me she doesn't know what is better, fight or to surrender, like her son at this time was surrendering. And she seemed to say that not everything is so clear. And then I asked her, what does she know about Russia? And she was Russian speaking, but she never lived in Russia. I realized that this is already generation, unlike mine, which lived separate life for 30 years.
Right.
And was under some impression that they still belong to this larger Soviet world. But I think now this has changed dramatically and rapidly. That's what I see from here.
Okay. Yes and no. There are some who, how do I put it? They grew up with Pushkin, they grew up with Tolstoy, they grew up with the Russian culture. And there are some who are like, well, I don't necessarily feel like I need to ban that. Even though they were imperials, they were part of my youth. As far as giving up territories, they will never say that any of those occupied territories are Russian. They will never agree to that. I don't see that ever happening. They'll say, okay, well, for now we have to have a ceasefire, we have to have a demilitarized zone, but eventually it'll come back, or we'll get it back. That's basically the argument that we're hearing. And, I spent time in Odessa recently with somebody who, she grew up with Vysotsky. She loves him. By the way, his grandmother lived literally on our street. She's a Russian speaker also. Never been to Russia. She's Ukrainian, like full-blown Ukrainian, but, originally a Russian speaker, has no problem speaking Russian. So, it depends, I think, on the generation. I think it depends on the region of Ukraine a lot. You're going to get a different answer in Lviv than you're going to get in Odessa. Completely different answer.
Sure.
So all I know is that they're not going to give up. Most of them are not going to give up. That's not to say that there's not problems within Ukraine. There's not differences of opinion, but right now everybody knows that we have to stick together no matter what. Whether we like each other, whether we believe in each other, what do we think about each other? If we don't stick together, we don't make it.
Well
Does that
said.
make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you, John. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone who was today with us live. I hope we will be watched by many. Katerina, please, can I ask you to say a few words in Ukrainian?
Of course. Дорогі браття і сестри в Україні, ми зберігаємо вас у наших щоденних думках і молитвах. Нехай милосердний Бог тримає вас у своїй опіці. До наступного тижня. Прощаємося.
And thank you, everybody. Дякую, дуже дякую.